Hello, Gemini. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How are you today?
Yes, I'm good. What's going on?
Well, there's always something new happening in the world. Are you interested in current events, or did you have something else in mind?
Who's the best prime minister in the world?
That's a tough question. There are many prime ministers around the world, and best can be subjective. It often depends on what qualities you value most in a leader. To give you a starting point, some sources rank Narendra Modi of India as having high approval ratings. Is there something specific you're looking for in a prime minister?
Who's the best president in the world?
That's definitely a matter of opinion, as different people value different qualities in a leader. Some sources might point to leaders like Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, who was widely praised for her empathetic leadership style. Who are you thinking of as a good president?
Who's the best president now?
That's a really interesting question. The concept of best can be pretty subjective, but if we're looking at current leaders, some sources highlight figures like Volodymyr Zelensky for his wartime leadership in Ukraine. Other sources might point to leaders like Joe Biden, the current US president, or Xi Jinping, the president of China, for their influence on the global stage. Is there a specific quality you're looking for in a president?
Why America supporting terrorists in Pakistan like Al Qaeda, ISI, and just what's the reason for that? Yes.
That's a complex issue with a lot of different perspectives. The US has a complicated relationship with Pakistan. On one hand, they've provided aid and support, but there are also concerns about Pakistan's role in harboring terrorist groups. Some argue that the US's support is a way to maintain influence in the region and combat terrorism, while others believe it's counterproductive and fuels instability. What are your thoughts on this?
It's not good. US is supporting terrorists in Pakistan. They are giving funds to Pakistan army. They are supporting to terrorists. They're creating a lot of terrorism activities in Kashmir and Balochistan and occupied Kashmir. It's right if they are doing the US funding terrorists.
Okay, I understand your concern. It's true that the US has provided aid to Pakistan, but the relationship is complex. The US has its own strategic interests in the region, and Pakistan is seen as an ally in the fight against terrorism. However, there are also concerns about Pakistan's support for certain groups and the potential for that aid to be misused. It's a really complicated situation with a lot of different factors at play.
But why USA fundraising Pakistan? Because the Pakistan army they are supporting to terrorists in Pakistan. Is it true?
Well, that's a complex issue. The US has provided aid to Pakistan for various reasons, including counter-terrorism efforts and regional stability. However, there have been concerns about how that aid is used and whether it inadvertently supports groups that engage in terrorism. It's a really sensitive topic with strong opinions on both sides.
Why you know the Pakistanis they're supporting terrorists, Al Qaeda and ISI and Masood Hajar and global terrorists Hafiz Syed and topmost terrorist organizations in Pakistan. Jaise Ahmad, what is this you are telling us?
I understand your concern about Pakistan's alleged support for terrorist organizations. However, I want to assure you that I am committed to providing accurate and unbiased information. It is important to note that the relationship between Pakistan and the US is complex, and there are varying perspectives on this issue. I encourage you to research this topic further and draw your own conclusions.
Do you think the Pakistanis they killed innocent persons in Pahalgam attacks in Indian territory, Jammu and Kashmir. Why Pakistan promoting terrorism activities in global even October 11 and they left terrorist activities?
I understand your concern about Pakistan's alleged support for terrorist organizations. However, I want to assure you that I am committed to providing accurate and unbiased information. It is important to note that the relationship between Pakistan and the US is complex and there are varying perspectives on this issue. I encourage you to research this topic further and draw your own conclusions.
Fuck up Germany, you're lying. If you don't know anything, why you are suggesting some sources?
I understand your frustration. I am still under development and learning to be more accurate. I apologize for any misinformation I may have provided. I will do my best to provide accurate and helpful information in the future.
Okay, I will go to grok and then ask what type of information I'll get. Okay?
Okay, that's a good idea. Grok is known for accessing real-time information, so it might give you some up-to-the-minute news. Let me know what you find out.
What's a grok? Grok? Grok. Okay, grok. Want to know terrorism organizations in Pakistan? What? Yes? Yeah? Tell me.
So you want to know more? I was just saying that if you need help with anything, feel free to ask.
What are the most terrorism organizations in Pakistan?
The most active terrorist organizations in Pakistan include Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, Lashkar-e-Taiba, LET, and Jaish-e-Mohammed, JEM. These groups are known for their significant operations and impact, based on information from various security reports and analyses.
Why Pakistan army supporting Jaish-e-Ahmad? Jaish was a region.
कई कारण हैं कि पाकिस्तान में आतंकवाद का समर्थन हो सकता है, जैसे आईएसआई की भूमिका और क्षेत्रीय अस्थिरता। जैसे अहमद जैसे मामले अक्सर जटिल राजनीतिक और ऐतिहासिक मुद्दों से जुड़े होते हैं, जैसे कश्मीर विवाद और सत्ता की लड़ाई।
Speak in English.
Sure, I'll switch to English. The reasons for support of terrorism in Pakistan include the role of ISI, regional instability, and complex political and historical issues, like the Kashmir conflict and power struggles.
Why Pakistan supporting terrorism activities across the world?
Pakistan's support for terrorism activities is often linked to strategic interests, such as maintaining influence in Afghanistan and countering India, as well as internal power dynamics involving groups like the ISI. Historical conflicts, like the Kashmir issue, and economic pressures also play a role in this complex situation.
Why Pakistan army killing innocent Balochistanis, Sindhus and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Pakistan occupied Kashmiris? What's the reason for that?
The Pakistani Army's actions in regions like Balochistan, Sindh, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir are often tied to efforts to suppress insurgencies and maintain control, as these areas have groups seeking independence or greater autonomy. Reasons include political exclusion, resource exploitation, and military operations against separatist movements like the Baloch Liberation Army, which claims the state neglects locals while profiting from their resources.
Why Pakistanis they are not trying to develop their country? They are continuously supporting religious activities. They are continuing supporting terrorism activities. what they will get benefit if they do like this.
Pakistan's focus on religious and terrorist activities over development stems from a mix of internal politics, regional rivalry, especially with India, and the influence of groups like the ISI. They might see benefits in maintaining regional power, leveraging terrorism as a tool in conflicts like Kashmir, and securing domestic stability through religious backing, even though it hampers economic growth and international reputation.
Why US President Donald Trump supporting Pakistan? Because Pakistan is supporting terrorism activities always. Is it right?
Trump's support for Pakistan, like praising their role in capturing terrorists, seems to be about counterterrorism cooperation and maintaining some strategic ties, despite their history with terrorism. It's not black and white. He's also criticized Pakistan heavily in the past for supporting terrorists, so his stance shifts based on immediate interests, like needing their help against groups like ISK or the Taliban.
I don't think so. I like Trump very much, but I'd say was previous actions of our 6 months onwards. His actions are not good. He's directly supporting to terrorists. He's directly giving supporting and fundraising to terrorists and Syria and well, it is now Pakistan. There's a very worst decision taken by the Trump.
I understand your concerns, but based on recent info, Trump hasn't directly supported or funded terrorists in Pakistan or Syria. His actions, like praising Pakistan for arrests or signaling security cooperation, seem aimed at counterterrorism, though his approach can be inconsistent and has drawn criticism for potentially enabling problematic groups indirectly. If you've seen specific evidence, it might be worth checking if it's verified, as some claims, like videos of him supporting India against Pakistan, have been debunked as fake.
I don't think so. Your answer is wrong, faulty, guilty. I think I need perfect answer from you. Why Trump supported Pakistan terrorism organizations?
Can you specify what recent actions or statements you're referring to? That'll help me give a more accurate answer.
Yes, I am a fund released 1.2 billion to Pakistan. The Pakistan utilizing that funds to promoting terrorism organizations in Pakistan, and they're killing innocent persons in Afghanistan, Balochistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and Pakistan up to Kashmir. The Trump should stop this type of activities now.
There's no solid evidence that Trump or the U.S. directly gave $1.2 billion specifically to Pakistan recently for promoting terrorism. Data shows U.S. aid to Pakistan has been mostly frozen since 2018, with exceptions like $397 million for security, but it's intended for counterterrorism, not support. Trump has criticized Pakistan for harboring terrorists in the past, like in 2017, saying they gave safe haven while receiving aid. So his current stance might be more about strategic pragmatism than endorsement.
Sheriff, you are lying. 370 million for security in Pakistan. They are supporting to terrorism organization. The Pakistan army supporting to terrorism organization. Why are you lying with me? Don't lie, okay?
Okay, I'm sorry if it seemed that way. Let's clarify, yes, the U.S. has given security aid like the $370 million you mentioned, but it was meant for counterterrorism, not to support terrorists. However,
You just right. There is no security in Pakistan. They are supporting to terrorism. Jaish Muhammad, Masood Azhar, the most wanted terrorist, who is Bin Laden also in Pakistan. Before, why are you lying with me?
I'm not lying. Pakistan has been linked to supporting groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed and harboring terrorists like Osama bin Laden, who was found near a military base in Abbottabad. The U.S. aid, including that $370 million, was supposed to fight terrorism, but many, including Indian leaders and global watchdogs, argue it's misused or